Hey folks, this is Jesse Cope, back with another episode of the American Soul Podcast. Hope y'all are doing well, wherever y'all are, and whatever part of the day you're in. Have one puppy dog that's gonna, I think, stay with me and is very interested. And another puppy dog that is off on their own and not so interested. Some guineas in the background already. And I did find one really interesting thing. For those of y'all that this is interesting to, it's going to be extremely interesting. For those of y'all that it doesn't doesn't make any sense, you're not going to care one way or the other. But I'm going to tell you anyway. I haven't tried it yet, but the winter, in particular, the winter squash and pumpkins that I have grown for years, I have always struggled with squash vine borers. And they're nasty little creatures which get inside the plants, and once they get in, it's over with unless you want to go try with a pocket knife or something to cut each single little caterpillar out. And my wife just sent me a little video this week of a man promoting a vine borer trap. And so I ordered one, and I'll let y'all know how it turns out. It could be an absolute failure, or it could be one of the best purchases I've made in a while. So, but we'll see. I'll let you know either way. I'm pretty excited about it. That's sad, right? That's what happens when you get old. So we'll get going. That's my little piece of information for today. We're going to talk about, well, it's an important subject, but it's a series of quotes that I've wanted to talk about for a long time. I've briefly touched on it, I think, many moons ago, and it's something I really need to come back to on the podcast frequently, and maybe we will. Maybe I'll do a better job of that. There's just so much to cover. You can't cover everything over and over again every day, even though we need to. And I need to go back and tell y'all thank you uh, for those of y'all that listen, and for those of y'all that continue to share the podcast with others, because we haven't even gotten to the end of the month, and y'all have yet again helped the podcast to do better than it has ever done before. So, and thank you, Lord, for the chance to sit out here and talk and hopefully help the country just a little bit. So we'll get going. We're going to talk about education, not education. I don't even know what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about immigration today. Immigration with an I, meaning coming into the country. And we are going to go through a series of Teddy Roosevelt's quotes, which I think y'all will find fascinating. And I have no idea how many of these we'll get to. Some of them, they're all individual quotes taken from speeches he gave or newspaper articles, etc. But they often rehash his same commentary, which is fine. That's great. But if we don't get to them all today, we'll come back at another time and see how far we can get. So this was 1907, and I don't know if I think this was after he had become president. So at any rate, these are some of his comments on immigration. In the first place, we should insist, you know what? I'm going to check something real quick because there it is. All right. Sometimes I'm sure y'all like to hear me scramble and struggle. We're going to come back and read that one last. So we're going to go to actually 1916. Quote. And this is a newspaper article speaking about Roosevelt's. Theodore Roosevelt, speaking at a luncheon given yesterday by Mrs. Vincent Astor for the National Americanization Committee in the Astor Court Building, declared that one of the reasons why many German Americans have shown greater love for their native land than for their adopted country is that the German system demands greater loyalty than is demanded in this country, and a greater contribution to the common welfare. Quote, and all of you know that I am free from a taint of neutrality, he added, so I can say this without suspicion, end quote. The encouragement of better housing conditions and a compulsion to learn the English language, Colonel Roosevelt said, would help the process of Americanization. We cannot make the Americanization movement a success, Colonel Roosevelt said, unless we approach it from an economic standpoint. It is true that governmentally Germany is an autocracy, but there has been a great deal more industrial freedom there than many of our old industrial countries. The German government says we expect you to work out good results, to get together with the laborer and yourselves decide what you are going to pay the doctors who are to pass on health to the employees and the amount of damages any employee merits. The government insists upon a great amount of self-government by the people themselves. I feel that by insistence upon proper housing conditions, we shall indirectly approach this. I want to see the immigrant know that he has got to spend a certain amount of his money in decent housing, that he will not be allowed to live on $2.50 per month board basis. Real important note there, folks. Roosevelt wasn't saying that you had to jack the price up to be like we see today in so many of the liberal cities about the freeze and rent or whatever else. He wasn't lowering it. He wanted to increase it. And he wanted to increase it specifically so that the immigrant couldn't come over here and work cheaply and not really be a part of this society and then send all of their efforts, money, resources back to their, quote, mother country, unquote. Let us say to the immigrant not that we hope he will learn English, but that he has got to learn it. Let the immigrant who does not learn it go back. He has got to consider the interest of the United States, or he should not stay here. He must be made to see that his opportunities in this country depend upon his knowing English and observing American standards. The employer cannot be permitted to regard him only as an industrial asset. We must in every way possible encourage the immigrant to rise up, help him up, give him a chance to help himself. If we try to carry him, he may well prove not well worth carrying. We must in turn insist upon his showing the same standard of fealty to this country and to join with us in raising the level of our common American citizenship. If I could, I would have the kind of restriction which would not allow any immigrant to come here unless I was content that his grandchildren would be fellow citizens of my grandchildren. They will not be so if he lives in a boarding house at $2.50 per month with 10 other boarders and contracts tuberculosis and contributes to the next generation a body of citizens inferior not only morally and spiritually, but also physically. This is another one. Big deal there, folks, right? You have to learn English. It's not a choice. You don't get an option. You have to learn it. And you have to be contributing here. So increase the standard of living, force the immigrant, right? If you're going to come here, this is where you're going to put all your time and resources. So a few months later, so still 1916, and this was a Memorial Day speech he delivered in St. Louis. Moral treason to the United States was charged by Mr. Roosevelt in an address delivered before the City Club against German Americans who seek to make their government representatives act in the interests of Germany rather than this country. He characterized the German-American alliance as an anti-American alliance, but added that he believed that its members not only do not represent, but scandalously misrepresent the great majority of real Americans of German origin. Using the motto America for Americans, for all Americans, whether they were born here or abroad, the former president declared that the salvation of our people lies in having nationalized and unified America, ready for the tremendous tasks of both war and peace. I appeal to all our citizens, the colonel said, no matter from what land their forefathers came, to keep this ever in mind, and to shun with scorn and contempt the sinister intrigues and mischief makers who would seek to divide them along lines of creed or birthplace or of national origin. Colonel Roosevelt said he came to St. Louis to speak on Americanism, to speak of and condemn the use of the hyphen, wherever it represents an effort to form political parties along racial lines, or to bring pressure to bear on parties and politicians, not for American purposes, but in the interest of some group of voters of a certain national origin, or of the country from which they or their fathers came. He was equally against the Native America of the wrong kind, and for the immigrant of the right kind, the former president declared. But the immigrant who did not become, in good faith, an American is out of place in the United States. He said each nation should be judged by its conduct and that the United States should oppose encroachment on its own rights, whether Germany, England, France, or Russia be guilty of misconduct. The effort to keep our citizenship divided against itself, the colonel continued, by the use of the hyphen and along the lines of national origin, is certain to breed a spirit of bitterness and prejudice and dislike between great bodies of our citizens. If some citizens band together as German Americans or Irish Americans, then after a while others are certain to band together as English Americans or Scandinavian Americans. And every such banding together, every attempt to make for political purposes a German-American alliance or a Scandinavian-American alliance, means down at the bottom an effort against the interest of straight-out American citizenship, an effort to bring into our nation the bitter old world rivalries and jealousies and hatreds. If that doesn't strike you as what's happening today, I don't know. There is no such thing as African American or Asian American or Mexican American, Hispanic, Latino, whatever, Australian American, European American, Black American, White American, Brown American, gay American, straight American, white American, brown, Black American. That is wholly a tactic of the left, wholly a tactic of people who dislike the United States. And I shouldn't say dislike, folks. I don't know what's in their heart, but wholly a tactic of people that are actively undermining and destroying the country. No matter what they think, that's what they're doing by dividing people into these groups. And that's what President Roosevelt was talking about along these political party lines. And there's no place for it, folks. There's absolutely no place for it. You're either American or you're not. The idea that you're a hyphenated American is only put out there to divide us, to put us into little groups so that we fight each other. And if you can't see that, as he said, he's talking about learning English, right? But if you can't see that that's your loyalty or you refuse to accept that, then you need to go back home, or you need to go, even if you were born here, then you need to go wherever you think is so great, whatever the other end of that hyphen is. If you really want to be African American or Asian American or European American or South American American or whatever, then go there and don't stay here, because you obviously don't have America's best interest at heart. You don't want American citizenship. You want to be a special American citizen. And we don't have place for that. It's dangerous. It weakens our nation. And that's what Roosevelt was talking about. 4th of July speech in 1917. You can tell in the background the Guineas have decided to come over and make themselves be known. Touching on the matter of language, Colonel Roosevelt declared that, quote, "We must have in this country but one flag, and for the speech of the people but one language, the English language. During the present war, all newspapers published in German or in the speech of any of our foes." They've gotten a little loud, haven't they? They get lost, the guineas do, and then they try and find each other. And I think they're either blind or something along those lines because they won't be that far apart and they just squawk incessantly at each other. But they're right there. And then all of a sudden they wake up and they look at the other one. They go, oh, there you are, friend. And then they stop. It's the most amazing, maddening thing you've ever seen. If they didn't do such a good job at keeping snakes away, we would have a guinea feast. All right, let me try this again. We must have in this country but one flag, and for the speech of the people but one language, the English language. During the present war, all newspapers published in German or in the speech of any of our foes should be required to publish side by side with the foreign text columns in English containing the exact translation of everything said in the foreign language. Ultimately, this should be done with all newspapers published in foreign language in this country. 27 May 1918. English as the sole language for schools, newspapers, and other usage in this country was urged by Theodore Roosevelt in an address here tonight under the direction of the National Security League. In voicing his approval of the recent proclamation by Governor Harding ordering that English be the only medium of instruction in public or private schools in Iowa, Colonel Roosevelt said, "This is a nation, not a polyglot boarding house. There is not room in the country for any 50-50 American, nor can there be but one loyalty to the Stars and Stripes." The fact that we try and appease, and you see it in voting, you see it in schools, you see it in all of our government, especially, well, it depends on what state you're in, but some of y'all know this in your own state. We have no right, responsibility, or anything else to have multiple languages printed for people in the United States. No other country does that. Not on a permanent, long-term basis. If you move to a country that speaks a different language, you learn that language. If you move to America, you should learn the English language. And if you want to function here in our schools, with our voting, in our government offices, then you ought to learn the English language. It's not whatever phobic the left wants to use. It just makes sense. You need to unify Americans. This is what President Coolidge was talking about when he made the comment that if those Christian values aren't just nearly universal, then the country falls apart. There's a core set of values, folks, that we all have to have together. And if we don't have them, the country falls apart. And it extends to a few other things. And language is a big deal. If we don't share the same language, then that's just one more way for people that want to undermine and destroy the country to divide us. And you can see it today. It's happening right in front of our eyes. This isn't hidden. All right, one more. It's a little long, so if I go over, I apologize. This was January 1919, a few months after the armistice that ended fighting in World War I, and just a little bit before President Roosevelt's death, I believe. From New York, January the 6th. What was the last public statement by Colonel Roosevelt was read last night at an all-American concert here under the auspices of the American Defense Society, of which he was an honorary president. "I cannot be with you all, so all I can do is wish you Godspeed," it read. "There may be no sagging back in the fight for Americanism merely because the war is over. There are plenty of persons who have already made the assertion that they believe the American people have a short memory and that they intend to revive all the foreign associations which more directly interfere with the complete Americanization of our people. Our principle in this matter should be absolutely simple. In the first place, we should insist that the immigrant who comes here does so in good faith, become an American, and assimilates himself to us. That if he does, he shall be treated on an exact equality with everyone else, for it is an outrage to discriminate against any such man because of creed or birthplace or origin. But this is predicated upon the man's becoming in very fact an American and nothing but an American. If he tries to keep segregated with men of his own origin and separated from the rest of America, then he isn't doing his part as an American. We have room but for one flag, the American flag. And this excludes the red flag, which symbolizes all wars against liberty and civilization, just as much as it excludes any foreign flag of a nation to which we are hostile. We have room but for one language here, and that is the English language. For we intend to see that the crucible turns out people as Americans and American nationality, and not as dwellers in a polyglot boarding house. And we have room but for one sole loyalty, and that is loyalty to the American people. I believe a copy of this letter is in the Library of Congress. So look, there's a lot there, and my Guinea's fowl here did not help, nor did our neighborly mower, if y'all heard that in the background. But maybe that entertained y'all, I don't know. At any rate, the point is, if you're going to come here, you got to be an American. And we could elaborate on a lot of this. As I said, we'll come back to it. I'll try and do a little bit better job next time. But if we're going to have immigrants come in, they have to assimilate to our values, our principles. And this goes all the way back to the principles of this country being the principles of Jesus Christ. And that's why you see this huge push today to have open borders, because then people that want to undermine, or that are, again, I don't know their heart, that are undermining and destroying the country, it makes it easier to do. Because if you can bring people in that have no real desire to be American and that want to be hyphenated, or if you can encourage that among people that are native, that were born here, then you can start to really destroy the country. And Theodore Roosevelt knew that this was a bad idea. President Roosevelt knew it was a bad idea 100 years ago, folks. And he makes some pretty good comments. If we're going to have loyalty, it's got to be to the American flag, to America, and to the principles which made us great. And those principles go back to God and Jesus Christ. God bless y'all. God bless your families. God bless America. We'll talk to y'all again real soon, folks. Looking forward to it.